Testing. Test. There we go. Everybody, we're going to get moving here in about 2 minutes. We had a couple other meetings run a little late, so we just want to give an opportunity for everybody to get over here. But I'd say we'll probably get moving. How many people do you need for quorum?
None.
Oh, we don't have any quorum number? Okay. So, well, would you want to go ahead and get in front of them? You ready? Yeah. Okay, moving. Okay, in that case, we will go ahead and get moving, it sounds like. So first thing we're going to do, obviously, is open up in prayer. So I'll ask Chairman Anderson, if you'd be so kind, sir, to give the blessing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If y'all bow with me, dear kind and Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for the blessings of this day, God. We look out the windows, we see the sunshine, we feel the warmth, God. We thank you for your continued guidance over this state and our leadership, God. Lord, we ask that you'll bless the proceedings of this meeting, and we do it with the people in mind, with your guidance. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. So this is the first subcommittee meeting, state and local government for governmental affairs. Excited to get the session going and start getting some bills in the works. Today we're going to start off with House Bill 113. Representative McDonald, please feel free.
If you don't mind. Any problem with that, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, that's okay. Fine.
Perfect. Yes, Chairman Anderson, we do feel the warmth in here with all the hot bodies here, so it is warm. Mr. Chairman, lady and members of the committee, I stand before you today to introduce House Bill 113. It's going to be the LC number on this is going to be LC 442899-EC. Okay. House Bill 113 is a critical piece of legislation aimed at increasing the security of state purchasing processes, ensuring the protection of our state's infrastructure and citizens from growing cybersecurity threats. HB 113 directs the Georgia Technology Authority, known as GTA, our state's designated cyber experts, to establish and maintain updated lists of companies and products that are produced or sold by entities linked to foreign adversaries, as defined by the United States through the Secretary of Commerce. The purpose of this list is simple: to protect Georgia state agencies, businesses, and citizens from security risks that come with foreign-made technology that poses potential threats. The list will be created by GTA and will serve as a valuable tool for the Department of Administrative Services and other state agencies. This list will help guide purchasing decisions to ensure that we're not inadvertently introducing cybersecurity vulnerabilities into our state system. Why the Georgia Technology Authority? Why the Georgia Technology Authority? Because GTA already works closely with federal authorities to receive critical information about which companies, products, and technologies are flagged as security risk on a national level. For example, certain technologies like drones and Wi-Fi routers have already been flagged by federal government due to cybersecurity concerns. Through House Bill 113, we will empower GTA to establish this list and make it publicly available also. This ensures transparency and encourages all Georgians to be vigilant in protecting themselves, their families, and their businesses from potential cyber threats. Additionally, this bill clarifies the role of DOAS in enforcement. If a company or product is found to be of a concern, a fine up to $250,000 or triple the entire purchase value, if greater, will be imposed on foreign companies, third-party vendors, or resellers selling such goods to state or state agencies. I want to emphasize that we've removed any specific country names from this bill and have adopted the federal definition of foreign adversaries. This allows us to remain flexible and proactive as the global security landscape continues to evolve. Let me be clear. House Bill 113 does not have a retroactive component. It will only apply moving forward, ensuring that as we make future purchases decisions, we're going to do so with a higher level of security in mind. In closing, it's about ensuring a safer, more secure Georgia. It's about taking steps now to prevent potential cybersecurity threats and that could compromise our state's infrastructure, citizens, and businesses. I urge your support for this important piece of legislation. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. Okay, I have one question. 15, Chairman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Floor Leader, thank you for the presentation. Just to kind of make something clear here, basically what we're doing is we're codifying in Georgia what is current federal guidelines regarding this. Is that correct?
You are correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Sanchez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. When it comes to concerned goods on lines 19 through 22, you include some examples like component parts, service, and technologies, but this is not an exhaustive list, correct? This is essentially the list will be created by the Georgia Technology Authority and include essentially any good from these countries?
Yes, it's going to be a list that's going to be being worked on with the passage of this bill. They're going to be looking at the federal government, seeing what's already on their list also, that will go into 113.
Okay, and if you permit me one more question, Chair, is there any idea of like what kind of, outside of what's listed on this bill, other sorts of goods that you are looking at potentially banning?
I'm going to have to let GTA, if you want to answer that.
Hi there, Cameron Fash with Georgia Technology Authority. I don't believe we have any, good or anything that we're looking at specifically now. It is just something that as we go through the process, we'll be able to take a broader approach to possibly banning some of these goods and services.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so at this point, I don't have any more questions, and I don't see that we have any presenters on this bill. So I'd open for motion. Second. Okay. So we got a motion. We have a second. At that point, I'll put it up to the committee. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, sir. Oh, Representative McDonald, you'll be in full committee tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. All right, so we got our first one down. We hit our stride. And with that, we're going to get my friend Representative Reeves to come present House Bill 137.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I'm here today to present.
I'm sorry, let me correct myself. I changed I took my ability as chair to flip some bills around. You are actually presenting House Bill 152. Hey, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill
That's
152
okay.
is a qualifications-based selection bill. This qualifications-based selection is a form of procurement of design professionals where a project owner ranks the respondent in terms of qualifications and then begins price negotiations with the highest ranked firm. If a price cannot be agreed upon, the project owner, the local government, can terminate the negotiations and move on to the next firm. This is already occurring in Georgia through the Brooks Act. The Brooks Act governs professional services procurement at the federal level requiring qualifications-based selection. And the law states that any local government or state government that uses a dollar or more of federal money must follow qualifications-based selection. And so the Mini Brooks Act requires qualifications-based selection, or QBS, at the state agency level in Georgia. This is a bill about the city and the county level. And there's an adage, one of the astronauts, John Glenn or Neil Armstrong, somebody asked him what he thought about when he got out in space, and he said, I'm thinking about, I hope this wasn't built by the lowest bidder. There are some things that need expertise to have structural integrity and give value to the taxpayer, and that's what QBS is in the area, particularly of engineering and architecture. Section 3 of this bill in front of you outlines all of the local control that the locals do retain when QBS is implemented. The locals, the cities and the counties will continue to have sole and absolute discretion over the qualifications that they believe will need to be in place for the project, and for the professionals that they are putting the bid out for. And so what this does is, because cost is the thing that has the direct impact on taxpayers, what this does is it makes sure that the professionals deliver the services needed to get the right return for the taxpayer dollars. And so there have been numerous studies that have shown that QBS delivers the most value to the taxpayers. There was a study done between Maryland that does traditional bidding and Florida, which does QBS at the state and local level. And it showed that Maryland's process, the traditional process, is longer. The bids or the project awards end up being more expensive. And with the projects being longer, time is definitely money with that. And so the model of our neighbor, as well as state agencies at the federal level, is a sound model. Going through some of the direct aspects of the bill, Section 1 deals with counties, Section 2 deals with cities. They exempt professional services defined on lines 146 to 156, architecture, interior design, professional engineering, land surveying, and landscape architecture from the requirement that necessitates the submission of at least 2 bids for any expenditures between $20,000 and $200,000. Lines 43 to 46 and lines 66 to 69 state that local governments are required to utilize QBS, and as do Sections 6 and 7 of the bill, lines 167 to 190, as well as 195 to 214. Section 3, as I mentioned earlier, that shows all the local controls that the locals retain, local governments, but it gives that definition that the bidders must have demonstrated competence and qualifications for the professional services, and there are a number of detail provisions that allow the QBS to have guardrails and specificity. Section 4 adds local governments to Chapter 22 of Title 50, which pertains to state government and the managerial control of the acquisition of professional services. Section 5 adds local governments to the Minnie Brooks Act, and that's M-I-N-I Brooks Act. That's the provision that says that state agencies in Georgia already use QBS based on the Brooks Act at the federal level. Section 6 and 7 shore up the changes from Section 5. Section 8 directs local governments to adopt ordinances, resolutions, and regulations regarding the new procurement method to give certainty to bidders. And Section 9 puts the effective date next year in 2026 to give plenty of time for the local governments and the bidders to learn the QBS system at the local, the city and the county level. So, when you're driving over a bridge, you expect for it to have structural integrity and be done by a qualified engineer, as well as many other infrastructure in the state. The state already does it. This will take it to the city and the county level. It's shown to be a sound model at the federal level in many other states. So respectfully ask for your approval of QBS at the city and county level.
Thank you. I actually apologize. I just want to make sure I've got a part of the record. Would you read off your LC number? Make sure we're all working off
It
the
is
right
the
one.
originally filed version, which is the one on the internet. It is House Bill 152 LC 473258.
Perfect. Thank you. With that, I'll open up for questions. We have any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Representative Reeves, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for public comment, so thank you. We're going to start off with Kaylin Day and Ted Burgess, ACCG Fayette County. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. Again, my name is Kaylin Day with ACCG, and beside me I have Ted Burgess, from the Chief of Procurement for Fayette County. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak in opposition of House Bill 152. I'd like to start by saying that we do not take issue with qualified base selection as a procurement method. It may be a wonderful method, and counties are currently required to use it when using federal funds, as mentioned by the sponsor. We have found that this method is used much more often by our larger counties, our counties who have entire departments and staff and resources devoted to procurement. However, in our smaller counties, who may only rely upon their county clerk for all their procurement needs, they use this much less often and would see a much higher administrative burden by the passage of this bill. Again, QBS is already a tool that counties can use for procuring professional services at their discretion. Many of them are using traditional RFPs or professional service contracts because that's what works well for them. These methods allow counties the discretion to choose quality firms while assuring their taxpayers that the fees they're paying for projects are not out of line with market conditions. There is not a compelling argument here to throw out that discretion and make QBS the only procurement tool that a county can use. I want to mention small businesses really quickly. So small businesses are a vital part of Georgia's economy. While I understand this bill has good intentions, in practice, small businesses would find themselves having a much more difficult time when getting awarded projects, and ultimately may see themselves getting excluded from this process. Moreover, this bill would set a terrible precedent for other industries and professions to come forward with mandates against local governments to further tie their hands when it comes to procurement. And lastly, one of the best ways for local governments to determine fair and reasonable fees is to compare the prices offered by those submitting proposals. House Bill 152 would forbid local governments from seeing any proposed fees until they have entered negotiations with the firm considered to be the most qualified. This puts counties at a disadvantage when they're negotiating. They would not have sufficient information to understand the current market conditions for their area, and this would only be further exacerbated by our smaller counties who are getting into, that rarely take on projects of such a scale. It would be very difficult for them to understand what is the fair market price. Sometimes the county simply just does not have the funds for the most qualified, most expensive firm out there. Sometimes it's a better fit to have perfectly well qualified, but competitively priced. And at the end of the day, committee members, local governments are responsible for being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. They are experts on their own budgets, and they're experts on their community's needs. QBS is already a tool that can be used at any time by procurement directors. And it's a tool in their toolbox they already have. They should continue to have the right to utilize the procurement method that meets the needs while also making the most administrative and financial sense. Home rule is not only important in principle, but in practice. I respectfully ask this committee to consider the county's perspective and vote no to House Bill 152. I'd like to pass it over to Ted now for any further comments. Thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable committee members. I'd like to mention some concerns that we do have with this current legislation. Proponents of QBS procurement, as you've heard, have characterized the issue as a choice simply between the selection of professional services based on either qualifications or low bid. In reality, it's not really an either-or situation. ACCG sent out a survey not long ago to all the counties asking what method they primarily use for selecting architects and engineers. 65 of the counties, or 40% of the total, responded. Of those that responded, 48% said they mostly use the traditional request for proposals, or RFP method, in which they evaluate qualifications, proposals, and price. 31% negotiate a professional services contract, which has been a method recognized by the courts since the early 20th century. And then 8%, or 5 counties, primarily use the low bid method. All 5 of these counties were very small, with populations under 15,000. And then 5%, which is 3 counties, currently use the QBS method. The traditional RFP requires firms to provide their qualifications, proposals, and estimated price in one proposal submission. This allows a local government to consider all 3 things in making a decision. Line 82 of House Bill 152 requires local governments to use the process in OCGA 50-22 for the acquisition of professional services, which is the QBS method, as we've heard. House Bill 152 would prohibit county governments from using the most commonly preferred RFP method, as we saw, for professional services contracts. It would also prohibit the use of negotiated professional services contracts. While the QBS selection process may be the right choice in some of these situations, other methods have proven successful in many of the county governments, as we can see by what they're using. There does not seem to be really a compelling reason to require all of the counties, large or small, to use the same procurement methods for all projects. There is a considerable difference between state-level projects and local projects. Differences in size, complexity, quantities of projects, and cost. A QBS process may be the better choice for state-level projects and some of the local, but county governments need flexibility to choose the best solution for their needs. Then line 99 of the bill says that we cannot ask for cost estimates until we're ready to commence negotiations with a chosen firm. Code section 50-22-6A would require local governments to negotiate a fair and reasonable price. Okay, a definition of fair and reasonable price isn't provided. However, the concept does occur in various places in public sector procurement requirements. The U.S. Department of Defense's Defense Acquisition University describes it as the price that a prudent business person would pay for an item or service under competitive market conditions, given a reasonable knowledge of the marketplace. It refers to the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR, list of techniques for making a fair and reasonable determination. The FAR says that the preferred method for most types of contracts are A, comparison of proposed prices received in response to a solicitation, and B, comparison of previously proposed prices and previous contract prices with current proposed prices for the like item. Okay, and of course, as we've heard, this does not apply to architectural and engineering services when using federal funds. While some Georgia counties do currently use the QBS selection process, which is generally some of the larger jurisdictions, the majority rely on the firm's qualifications and technical expertise plus comparative prices. Being denied these analytical techniques would put counties at a disadvantage in going to a price negotiation. For example, Fayette County, where I'm from, issued an RFP for architectural and engineering services for a new recreation multi-use facility. We received 14 proposals. Prices ranged from $327,000 to over $1 million. If the highest price firm had been the one with the best QBS score, the county may have been faced with a decision, well, can we afford to build this or not? Do we abandon the project? Okay, next. The website for the National Society of Professional Engineers, or NSPE, says 46 states have implemented some sort of QBS law. Georgia has implemented such a law, as we heard a while ago. This law was intended to when it was passed, to govern state agencies only when procuring architectural and engineering services. Apparently, not all of the 46 states have had completely positive experiences with QBS. A number have introduced subsequent legislation in an effort to eliminate or reduce QBS requirements. And this is according to the NSPE website. These include Kentucky, Louisiana, Florida, Kansas, Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Georgia. It appears that this part of the website hasn't been updated a little bit, so there may be others added to that. Okay, and lastly, I would mention that there are procedural changes in the legislation as it currently stands that would impact operations in a number of ways, such as uncertainty as to budgeting sufficient funds for a public works project, uncertainty as to the allowability of increasingly popular contracting methods like the contractor-led design-build projects. In these cases, the general contractor hires the design team. And then lastly, uncertainty as to whether the county has an existing working relationship with a firm as provided on line 106 of the bill, since the term isn't defined. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. At this point, I'll go ahead and open up for questions if anybody's got any questions. That was a lot for me to digest. I'm still trying to work through all of it. All right. Representative Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for the presentation. So You just mentioned on the last part, line 106, around contracts, and so the current definition just talks about an existing working relationship, and so in regards to, you say isn't defined, what are some of the things you're looking for in a definition? Do you mean like having an existing contract with that, or what are you looking for in that regard?
Yes, sir, that might be one thing. Does it mean somebody we have a current active contract with? Does it mean somebody that we had a contract within the past number of years? Does it mean someone who has subcontracted with us? Yes, sir. It would be very helpful if that were defined. What do you mean by an existing relationship?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have any more questions at the moment. With that,
Thank
we're going to move on to Scott Gordon, AIA. Scott, you in here? There he is.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you on this matter of what I consider great importance to our state, which is quality-based selection for design professionals. My name is Kenneth Scott Gordon. I was born and raised in western North Carolina and moved to Georgia in 1989 with my family to East Cobb. I've got 2 degrees in architecture from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture, and a first professional degree. So I've been a registered architect for a number of years. In 1991, after finishing architecture school, I moved to the state of Georgia, to the city of Woodstock, Ward 6, the Cherokee County District 4, House 20, Senate District 32, and have been there for over 30 years in my 36 years here in Georgia. So although I'm not native, I consider this home. Community service is something that I've taken very seriously, and as a result, I've served both as an appointed official in the city of Woodstock on the Planning Commission. I've also served as an elected official as a Cherokee County Commissioner from 2014 to 2018. And I served, of course, in numerous leadership roles in boards and professional organizations. I'm a registered architect with 35 years of experience, where the last 25 were focused on working for local city and county government. Sustainability, working on courthouses, fire stations, parks, recreation, law enforcement centers, county administration centers, city halls, and anything that local government needs to serve the constituency. About a year ago this week, after a very long career, 35 years, working in small, mid-sized, and large firms, I left my position as a vice president with a national AE firm and joined the staff of Cherokee County, where I once served as a commissioner, as the General Services Agency Director, where I lead 5 departments, which includes capital projects. We'll be delivering over $330 million worth of facilities through our 2024 SPLOST over the next 5 years. The reason I go out into that background for the committee's sake is I've got an interesting perspective on this, because I was serving in a city, I was serving in a county, I have been a constituent, a vendor, a design professional, an appointed official, an elected official, and now I serve in the owner's role as serving a local government. So I don't think there's a side of this argument that I've not experienced at some point over my 35-year career, and ironically my 35 years in Georgia. And from this perspective is why I believe QBS is absolutely right for local government in Georgia. So from my experience serving both at the city and county levels, local governments have a choice when it comes to how to evaluate and ultimately select a design professional. QBS will not change that. It would only change when we evaluate the fee. That's it. You're still evaluating the qualifications. It's not placing extra burden on anyone. If you're a small municipality or county and you're not evaluating the qualifications, you're not doing your job. But the timing of this consideration will turn the design professional's services into a commodity instead of a service. Let me give you an example. If you were soliciting, each of you, services for a doctor for a quality of life threatening surgery, would you shop for your surgeon based on who had the lowest price, or would you seek out the most qualified surgeon with the skills, training, and experience and best outcomes for your ailment? Well, it's an absurd question, because nobody chooses their surgeon based on price. As stewards of the health of local government and delivering quality of life through expenditure on facilities, neither should we. Just like doctors, lawyers, and architects offer specialized skills and professional experiences. Everyone is not the same. We are legally charged with health, safety, and welfare of our communities and as they apply to the built environment. Applying the same process for buying staplers to obtaining professional services is not apples to apples, and we should avoid it. AE projects are complex and they require high specialization and skill. As such, the track record and qualifications and expertise of the firm and professionals will be responsible for a project's design are much more meaningful than the lowest fee. It's already been mentioned that in 1972 the Brooks Act was passed to make sure that the citizens were getting the most qualified firms also at a fair and reasonable cost. And we've already heard testimony today of how many states it's used in and surrounding areas. I have copies of a study I'd like to leave with you when I leave the podium that will show you some additional white papers about why QBS consistently delivers projects more efficiently and a lower cost. And I will leave by saying this, that municipal and county governments have a fiduciary responsibility to their taxpayers to make responsible investments, spend dollars wisely, and this includes the tax dollars required to deliver quality projects. They're not hamstrung by a procurement process that relegates a design professional to a commodity when they are crucially important to making sure that projects are delivered. Quality is not a size issue. Fee is not a size issue. Large or small, we should be looking for quality. We should be looking for competition. I spoke briefly to Jeff Lax at GSFIC, and we use a chart. They use a chart that talks about the construction value as a percentage of construction cost that allows you to sort of understand where a fee ought to land. So when you open that fee, after you've picked your most qualified person, you have an opportunity to understand where the ranges might be. I have the benefit of being a registered architect, so in Cherokee County, I know what the fees are worth. But that is equally available to us through other state agencies in the way they determine what market rates are for fees. We should not, I've heard it said many times by lawyers, you should never ask a witness a question you don't know the answer to. And we should not be asking for fees for architectural services so we don't already understand where those things might fall. Otherwise, you do fall into a situation where you've got 300 and $1 million on the other end. If you don't already know where you need to be, you're not prepared to take that solicitation. So lastly, I'm here today speaking on behalf of myself and my profession in support of QBS. I'm not speaking on behalf of Cherokee County government. That is our commission's role. However, it is relevant to note that in my role as the director of the GSA, that we are procuring projects from $100,000 to $100 million in forthcoming years, and we have pivoted to the QBS model. Our participation has never been higher. We have interested parties from high-quality firms, from large to small, and based on the project size and appropriateness, we're having no problem getting the right people to the table for the right projects. So we're having outstanding outcomes, we're yielding qualified firms, and our design professional costs, I assure you, are at or below, because of negotiation, the market rate. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, as a taxpayer of Cherokee County, I'm glad that we got you guys doing what you're doing up there. With that, I'll open up the floor to questions. Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you. I'll leave these on the corner for anyone who's interested. It's a white paper. If you're having trouble sleeping, that'll fix it.
All right. Jim Thornton, GMA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I'll be very brief. Jim Thornton with the Georgia Municipal Association. Of course, we represent all 537 cities in Georgia. We are not opposed to this bill, so we actually have surveyed our members, discussed it amongst our leadership team, and certainly we feel like many of what you've already heard from the previous speakers that QBS is a preferred system. It's something that we wish all of our cities would voluntarily use. Certainly we don't love the idea of having to have it be mandated at the state level, but we are not opposed to that because we do feel like there is tremendous value to all cities and city taxpayers from implementing a qualifications-based selection system. It's something we've been encouraging our cities to move to, and so therefore we do not have any opposition to the bill as presented. Feel like the safeguards in the bill that Representative Reeves and others have worked on do allow enough local discretion so that no city is forced to use a design professional or contractor that is not a good fit for their local community. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? I think you're good. Thank you. Our next, Cedric Clark with, I'm going to say SEL Engineers. Did he? Okay, we'll hold him then. We'll roll over. Taylor Anderson with Blue Land Works.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to speak in favor of House Bill 152. My name is Taylor Anderson. I own Blue Land Works. We're a small civil engineering firm, and by small, I mean 13 employees, and I also have the honor of serving the citizens of the city of Sugar Hill as a city council member. I'm not speaking on behalf of the city. These are my views only, but certainly qualification-based selection is the best way, even for small businesses, because quite frankly, the larger businesses can undercut us and take a loss on a project in order to secure it. That's a big problem for us as a small company. The other options that I think that have been presented are good and they have their place, but not when it comes to professional services. We want the best folks, the most qualified folks, and that's why we support 152.
All right, thank you. Open for questions. Seeing none. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to move on to Michael Sullivan, ACEC, a.k.a. Sully.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Michael Sullivan. I'm President and CEO of ACEC Georgia. We're the trade association for Georgia's engineering industry. As I like to say, we represent all the engineering companies in Georgia, and some of them pay us for that. I want to make it clear, we didn't just drop this bill willy-nilly. This has been a 10-year-long process of working with ACCG and GMA, listening to their concerns, and trying to craft legislation that address those concerns to the greatest extent possible. Now, the one we couldn't compromise on is the mandate. You can't have a mandate without it being a mandate. That's kind of essential to the legislation. But there are a lot of things in this bill that reflect those meetings and conversations and changes that we've made. First, we make it clear that local governments have sole and absolute discretion in what the qualifications are. No one is saying what those qualifications have to be. The local government decides based on that project and their local considerations what the qualifications are. Now, we did set out some things to make it clear that that doesn't just have to be an engineering firm with 50 PhDs on staff. What could be considered? Past performance with the local government. Project location, the office location of the bidder, familiarity with local concerns or procedures. And this list is not exhaustive either. For example, one qualification could be, hey, firm number one, what would be your approach to the project that would save us money in the construction phase of the project? Engineering is roughly 5% of the cost of a project. Construction is 95% of the cost of the project. I would submit that this fixation on we got to have cost is maybe swallowing camels and choking on gnats, and focusing on 5% rather than the big part. The 95% seems a little unnecessary. They can move forward if only one response is received. They can enter into multi-party demand services contracts. They can expand the scope of services with an existing provider they already have a good working relationship, because that's kind of qualifications-based selection. They've worked with that firm. They understand what that firm can do. And to be clear, who decides what that means, what relationship means? The language literally says sole discretion of the local government. They decide whether it's a firm that they've got a great working relationship with, and if they decide it is, then it is. You actually wouldn't want to constrain that in a definition, because you'd be excluding some firms that those local governments might want to continue their relationship. We actually probably would still be looking for common ground with ACCG and GMA. That's kind of the way we operate. We try to solve problems. We try to address concerns. But I got a call from the Associated General Contractors, and the general contractor said, you guys got to do something about this. My members are complaining about the impacts of low bid or best value engineering on their side, the construction side of things. So it was actually the contractors, not the engineers, who kind of kicked us into higher gear. So it seems, I think, that the primary objection is to the mandate, right? They don't want it to be mandated. And I've got an 18-year-old son. I kind of understand how that works. He doesn't like to be told what to do. Even when it's in his best interest, he doesn't like to be told what to do. But I want to be clear, we're not plowing new ground here. You're applying the QBS rules that are already in place for state agencies and have been in place since the Reagan administration. You're putting this language, if this were to become law, in Chapter 91 of Title 36 of the Georgia Code, which is titled Public Works Bidding. A whole bunch of sections. In fact, there are 5 articles and 37 different subsections relating to public works bidding. The idea that the General Assembly has abdicated that to total home rule is just simply not accurate, and the legislation reflects that. You already regulate how local governments bid public works, and there are also lots and lots of Georgia Code sections where you regulate other parts of the built environment. State building codes, the condemnation process, Zoning Procedures Act, Georgia Procurement Restoration. Those are just a few of the many examples of how you regulate in this space. And it's hard to imagine anything more local than the zoning power, yet the Zoning Procedures Act restricts how local governments exercise that power. The question is, why does it have to be mandated? Well, James Madison wrote back in 1788 in Federalist 51, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. We would like to think that local governments would adopt what is clearly, demonstrably, research project and survey after survey, the best way to procure design services. But even though so many studies have recommended it, so many studies have found that it is the best method, and I'm not aware of a study that stands for the proposition that any other method of procuring professional services is good or better. But they're not. They're not doing that. In fact, you heard that 40% of counties in Georgia are still using what we would like to call the second worst method of procuring professional services. Pure low bid being the worst method, and the false security of best value or a process that looks at both qualifications and price is the second worst method. We also think that there's a pretty important reason why you want to mandate this, and that's because the stakes are very high. Study after study has demonstrated that bad things happen when you use cost as a component, not the sole component, a component of selecting a provider of professional services. If you're lucky, the bad things are things like schedule extension, change orders, cost overruns, rework, redesign. That's if you're lucky. If you're not so lucky, it could result in failures that threaten public safety. Stakes are high, and that's why we believe it needs to be mandated. And engineers take an oath to protect public safety. That is part of their ethical commitment as engineers. Also, I think there's a tort bill that's been introduced in the General Assembly. We're going to be talking about that a little bit this year. Just want to throw it out there that there's a claim called negligent design. Local governments can be sued, and the state can be sued, for negligent design when there's been some sort of harm and they allege that the design had something to do with that harm. So that's costly litigation and potential damages for local governments. Some people are saying, look, we don't need a mandate. We can already do this as permissively. But to be clear, and the argument being, oh, well, actually, 40% of us use best value, like we look at cost and qualifications. But the status quo, the law as it stands today, doesn't prohibit low bid. That's one of the tools in the toolbox that has been referred to. And again, lots and lots of studies indicate that qualifications should be the sole consideration, and even best value is a problem. In fact, there was a Maryland study that Representative Reeves referenced, where they looked at Maryland and Florida. The only difference in their procurement, Florida was pure QBS, Maryland was best value. They weren't a low bid state, they were best value state. But the cost of construction, the cost of engineering was double in Maryland what it was in Florida, simply because of the introduction of that cost component. But you don't have to take my word for all this. Also, I should mention that Maryland study found that 87% of the time the low bidder was selected. That's an amazing coincidence, isn't it? So you don't have to take my word for all this. 46 states require QBS at the state agency level. 28 states require it at the local government level. Closer to home, 10 of the 13 states in the South require it at the local government level, including 4 of the 5 states that border Georgia. Only South Carolina does not require QBS at the local government level. The American Public Works Association, which is the association of state, county, and city folks who are responsible for procuring, constructing, operating, maintaining public works facilities, has advocated mandated QBS at all levels of government since 1973. I'm going to quote, "The American Public Works Association believes that the public interest is best served when governmental agencies select architects, engineers, and related professional technical consultants for projects and studies through qualifications-based selection procedures. Basing selection on qualifications and competence rather than price fosters greater creativity and flexibility and minimizes the potential for disputes and litigation." Speaking of litigation, guess who else has advocated for mandatory QBS at all levels of government? The American Bar Association. Probably didn't see that one coming, but they have mandated, they have called for, mandated that, and QBS is part of their model procurement code. There are some other organizations, though, you might find this more interesting, extolling the use of QBS as the right way to procure design services. The Associated General Contractors QBS Manual says QBS facilitates optimal design and value maximization within a defined budget, resulting in the owner getting the best bang for the buck. This designated budget also allows the team to evaluate design alternatives and/or the owner's wish list while keeping the budget on track. They are advocating for QBS. This one's from the Handbook for Georgia County Commissioners, created on behalf of the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. Chapter 12, Public Works and Public Utilities. For the supervision of any public works project, qualified engineering services are a primary concern. A professional engineer can protect the public from excessive costs and from unsafe construction and maintenance practices that fail to meet minimum standards. Selecting a consulting engineer should be done carefully. With larger public works projects, a request for qualification occurs prior to submitting cost proposals. Generally speaking, selecting engineering consultants based on their technical merit and expertise, followed by separate negotiations for costs based on the highest ranked technical firm, is the preferred approach for procuring engineering services. This is known as qualifications-based selection. It's also worth noting that nowhere in that manual do they promulgate any other method for procuring professional design services, only QBS. Here's a quote from Jim Higdon, the former executive director of the Georgia Municipal Association. Experience has proven that selecting design professionals on the basis of price alone can often result in unmet project expectations and higher overall project costs. QBS, on the other hand, properly focuses the selection process on factors most critical to a project's success: experience, competence, and reliability. As stewards of public resources, all local officials should strive to provide the very best value to their constituents, and that is really what QBS is all about. This is my favorite one, though. ACCG endorses the use of QBS for procurement of design professional services as an effective and efficient alternative to traditional low-bid procedures. That is from the 2004-2005 county platform of the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. And the last quote, hiring a professional service firm is just like hiring a critical employee. Would anybody hire critical employees by simply asking for their salary expectations and making a selection based on that? Of course not. You would want to know whether they're qualified to do the job. And then you would enter into negotiations about salary. And if you were looking at both, there would always be that temptation. Well, look how much money I could save if I hired that person. They're maybe just as qualified, maybe not, but you've been seduced by that low cost. So that is why we believe this should be mandated. That's why we're hoping that you'll approve this legislation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Sully. I've got one question. Chairman Saines.
Thank you, and I came a little late, so I apologize if this has been covered. But trying to assess kind of the need for it, and I understand the idea of not being reactive, but can you give me an example of a time where a project, there was some kind of detrimental outcome of a project based on a lesser qualified
I can.
entity?
I'll tell you a serious story, but I'll start with a funny story for it first, because I think it really demonstrates this. A county, which I shall not name, hired an engineering firm, which I also shall not name, to design a jail. This was up in North Georgia. This was a few years ago.
Do you mind naming it so we can understand it?
I'm not going to do that, either one of those things.
I hold off my question. It doesn't give me a valid example. Thank you.
Well, if anybody else is interested, they designed the jail. They were low bidder, put the prisoners in the jail, and guess what? They didn't hold the prisoners. The prisoners were able to escape from the jail because the firm that designed the jail had never designed one before and didn't have any experience with that. But happy to, Representative Sainz, I'd be happy to talk to you about it off the record, but I don't think dragging a county or an engineering firm into this is appropriate.
Okay, so with that, Representative Sanchez, we're going to let you wrap up the question here, and then we're going to move on to our last presenter.
All right, thank you so much, Chair. Let's look at a question. Thank you so much for this comprehensive presentation. Did any of the studies show that QBS has any impact on like the diversity of firms that are selected for contracts, whether using this system creates a situation where the same firms are selected over and over again? Is there any difference from the other traditional forms of qualifications, or is just no impact at all?
There hasn't been a direct study on that particular aspect, but there have been studies that have referenced that it didn't really have that much of a difference.
Okay.
I should just mention also, ACC Georgia, we represent 80% of our members are firms of 60 employees or less. If we were doing anything that was negatively impacting small firms, that would be an employment problem for me, and I'm certainly not interested in doing that. And you heard from several very small firms here today who support this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Sully.
Yep.
All right, our last one on the list is, did Cedric make it back in, Mr. Clark?
Good afternoon. My name is Cedric Clark, president of Southeastern Engineering, civil engineering firm in Marietta, Georgia. Glad to be with you today. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to say a couple of words in support of HB 152. I first got my introduction to qualification-based selection in 2005 when Sandy Springs first incorporated as a city. And one of the things that we quickly learned, I was a young transportation engineer 20 years ago to this date, is that when you are selecting qualified firms, you want to make sure that you're getting the best firm in the proposal. And so what we decided to do, even though it was not a mandate or was not required, City of Sandy Springs, we decided to use QBS selection as the format for the city. To date, they still have the same process in place. And I think that's really due to the fact of what Sully talked about with the best value. The initial bid is just one aspect of getting the best value. Other things that you want to consider is what kind of quality product or deliverable will you receive from this firm. QBS looks at that. It looks at what projects have you done, similar size, scope, etc. The other piece of that is the life cycle cost of the entire project. So when you look at cost overruns and you look at change orders and you add that into the overall project life cycle, then you can see if you're getting the best value for your money. And so fast forward to 2010, from 2010 to 2013 as Public Works Director for the City of Union City, I went to a local jurisdiction that did not do QBS selection. And we had a significant project where we selected a contractor to come do work for us that was not the most qualified bidder. They were the lowest bid. They submitted a bid, had obvious errors and omissions, and instead of going to the next qualified bidder to select them, we work with that firm in order to get the errors corrected and the omissions. We got that information in because the low bid looked attractive. However, at the end of that project, we had a change order for $2.5 million total at the end of the project, and it also went to litigation. So when the city looked back on that process, we realized we did not get the best value. And so I urge the committee today to take that in consideration and encourage you to please pass House Bill 152. That ends my comments.
Perfect. I'll open up for any questions. No questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank
you. Representative Reeves? No more. We're going to take the position at this time. We're going to do this hearing only. I think there's been a couple questions that need to be addressed, and we'll consider it what we're going to do tomorrow in full committee. All right. Thank you, Representative Reeves. With that, we're going to stand at ease here for just about 5 or 6 minutes. So we're going to wait for the chairman to come back. And let me text him real fast, and if I don't hear from him, I'll try to present one of them myself. So. I just got a text from the chairman, and he is on his way back. He should be here in just a second. We'll go ahead and get moving. I appreciate everybody being patient with us. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and present House Bill 137. So it's LC number 473227. And basically what this bill does is it changes the amount from 100,000 to 250,000 for local boards of education, the contract purchase price amount. Obviously, I don't know if anybody's aware, but we have this thing called inflation, and it's been pretty brutal over the last several years. So it picks this up in several pieces of the code. Like said, Section 2 is school districts, and Section 4 is the county piece of it. Line 87 involving expenditure of less than 200,000. It also updates that line to 250. Section, we go to line 109. No contract involving expenditure of more than 20,000 but less than 250 shall be awarded under this code section. So again, it updates to this. I think making it consistent. 250,000 as the new upper limit. With that, I'll go ahead. We've got one one group that'd like to speak for the measure, and it is Mark Waddell, Kaylin Day, and DJ Waller, ACCG, AGC, and GMA. Now come on down. I got you on the first one. You got your other one. Just you. Go ahead, Mike's on.
I'm DJ Waller with the Georgia Municipal Association. Thank you to committee chair for allowing us to speak today. As you mentioned, this raises that threshold from 100,000 to 250,000. We think that this will help tremendously remove the unnecessary delay for smaller projects. As you mentioned, inflation has increased over the years. I think the last time this threshold was addressed was in 2000. I was 4 years old and I had hair on my head. So I think it's time for a good change, and we fully support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just piggyback on the back of that to say that the counties are very thankful for Chairman Anderson for bringing this bill. It'll save them valuable time and money and having to not have to bid out smaller size projects. We also hope this will increase some competition among vendors. Thank you again, Chairman, and we appreciate a yes vote on this bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mark Woodall, Associated General Contractors. I had the pleasure of working with ACCG and GMA 24 years ago when we created this law. Basically set the threshold of $100,000. Anything over $100,000 has to be publicly advertised and competitively awarded. If it's an emergency or something, they can react and go to someone immediately. But something below that can be done without being, competitively awarded. So obviously in 24 years, we've kind of increased cost, and so we're very much in favor of this legislation going to 250. We appreciate our partners and our sponsor in looking at the measure. We passed this once, but it got vetoed because it didn't include our state agencies. This measure includes our state agencies as well, so hopefully we can get across the finish line.
And thank you for addressing that. There was some curiosity of how that happened. With that, I'll open up the floor to questions. Seeing none, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Chairman Anderson, I don't know if you want to do anything else on this bill. Otherwise, he does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, that's probably the easiest bill I've ever had to not present. And secondly, a small correction on my good friend Mark Woodall. We've actually passed this bill twice in the House. Last year it got caught up on the Senate side. Year prior to that, it was caught up in some decisions in the governor's office. So I would graciously appreciate the committee's favorable consideration and would be glad to answer any questions if there are.
Again, open up for questions. Seeing none, at this time I'll entertain a motion. Motion second. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Obviously none. Thank you very much. So that takes care of House Bill 137. All right, so let's finish up our last one on the list here. House Bill 155. My understanding is is there a substitute to 155?
Yes, and the copy you have is the, what I'm submitting as a committee substitute to the original version of 155. And we're operating from LC 473290S. Just to make sure everybody's got the right copy of this. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present this to the subcommittee. About 3.5 years ago, I chaired a study committee looking at the annexation dispute resolution process in Georgia that we had some issues with. The laws that were passed to regulate this were written in a way that it was a little restrictive, so the process was unable to fully function the way that it should function for dispute resolution. Coming out of our study committee, we had proposed legislation that we adopted and ended up getting passed and signed into law that opened up some of the time frames and allowed the process to we thought at the time, to function the way it was designed originally. Here we are about 3 years later and realize that we found the next logjam. And the biggest issue we've had here is the impaneling of an arbitration panel to settle these disputes without kicking it over into the court system, which the only people who benefit from that are those that are involved with the court system, of course. So what 155 does is it's a cleanup, if you will, from that original legislation that we passed to make the changes to the dispute resolution process. I'll briefly go through what it does. One of the issues that has come up is the pool available to pull from to place the panel in place. And it's restrictively small and has caused an issue. So we've expanded that pool. We've expanded it to include county managers, administrators, and city managers and administrators, of course, that are under certain guidelines and restrictions to make sure there's not a conflict. So that's one component that will assist DCA going forward to try to make the process work the way that it should. Another thing that we found out was the time frame was very restrictive. The original annexation dispute resolution allowed 15 calendar days for the panel to be put in place. We have expanded that in essence to 20 business days. This adds more time, and it also allows for there's the 15-day, we've changed calendar to business days. That adds additional time in there, but it also allows us to work around holidays, to give all the interested parties an opportunity to do the proper vetting, and for the DCA to reach out to this expanded pool of candidates to make sure we've got enough to present to the counties and the municipalities to so they could exercise their strikes if they so choose. The next thing that we did with this bill is to address that issue. The way the law is currently written and interpreted is that if a proposed panel pool is presented to the counties and the municipalities, they have the option to strike from that to reach the desired number to serve on the arbitration panel. If those strikes are not exercised, then the interpretation of the law the way it is now, then DCA is not able to narrow that number down and actually impanel or populate the panel. So what we've done is we have put a provision in the law that would allow them to, once the panel's been presented, if no strikes are exercised, then DCA can randomly appoint the panel with the appropriate makeup from the pool that was presented. Let's see, we also allowed a provision so that DCA can replace a panelist should someone, for whatever reason, be either unable or unwilling to serve once they are put on the panel. That was an issue that could halt the whole process before. And then one of the last things we did with this bill is we put a little bit of an increase in pay for people serving on the panel to try to provide further inducement for agreement to serve. And we feel like, when I say we, let me kind of tell you where this legislation came from and the parties involved in investigating this, and that's the people who are involved in the process. During the interim, we had multiple meetings between ACCG, GMA, and DCA to work out how to allow this process to work the way it was originally intended to. Mr. Chairman, that's a good summary of the bill, and be willing to answer any questions if there are.
Open to questions. Seeing none, Mr. Chairman Anderson, we will open the floor up to Todd Edwards and Jim Thornton with ACCG and GMA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Todd Edwards with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. We commend Chairman Anderson for bringing this bill forward. We've worked with him extensively over the years, both with the cleanup legislation a few years ago and also the revisions in front of you today. Happy to answer any questions. It's been a lengthy process. It's been our honor to work alongside my colleague Jim Thornton at the Municipal Association and DCA. We don't always solve all the problems, but we think this is a great step in the right direction. Would appreciate your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you, Representative Chairman Anderson, for bringing this bill. I agree with what my colleague at ACCG says. We have worked closely on this language. We think that this will make the process work as it was intended, addressing some of those hotspot issues, if you will, that have caused problems over the last 3.5 years. The inability to get enough volunteers, or you know, for the panel to have cities and counties have an opportunity to vet them properly. We feel like the time frame that's been built in here is going to be an improvement, and look forward to the favorable consideration of this bill. Ask your consideration. We would be revising some of our training. We do joint training work along with the Carl Vinson Institute on this to try to make sure that this process works as it was intended, to resolve disputes and to avoid the cost of litigation, which is ultimately our goal. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Again, I'm open to questions. I don't see any, so I appreciate it very much. And I just want to kind of, on my perspective, note, this is something we've all been working on for a while. This has been a kind of a rough process that we inherited when Chairman Anderson and I and Chairman Leverett over here impaneled it was the study committee on annexation and cityhood
Since
several years ago.
2007, sir, is when it started.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see we've made some progress. This is really important in some of these areas that have more dense populations. So thank you for working on this. And at this point, I'd go ahead and open the floor for a motion. Move to pass. Can I get a second? Second. Go ahead, second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Chairman Anderson. Your bill passes. So I don't have anything else. Again, we'll be meeting tomorrow at the standing, Chairman Anderson, correct me if I'm wrong, but standing meeting time for governmental affairs at 3 o'clock in 606. With that, we are adjourned.